The strongest metal tools the Egyptians had were copper, and copper is quite soft, so it's mind-boggling to think that that is what they used to penetrate granite. The only material really strong enough to penetrate granite, well, that's diamond. And if the ancient Egyptians had diamond cutting technology, well, then history would have to be rewritten.
Even today, one of the world's greatest mysteries is the Great Pyramid of Giza. Scientists still don't fully understand how or why it was built, despite centuries of inquiry. According to conventional thinking, it was built as a tomb for Fourth Dynasty pharaoh Khufu, yet many have noted that it lacks the features that distinguish other tombs around Egypt. No human bones, artifacts, jewelry, or works of art, nor the domestic objects an entombed pharaoh would be buried with for use in the afterlife, have ever been discovered within it. Due to these flaws in the theory that the Great Pyramid served as a tomb, a variety of alternate explanations for its use have been proposed over the years, ranging from an astrological temple to a grain storage facility and beyond. In the 1960s, a man by the name of Edward Kunkel gave rise to one of the most astonishing hypotheses ever. Pharaoh's Pump, a book written by Kunkel and published in 1962, caused a stir in the field of Egyptology. In it, he made the case that the Great Pyramid's chambers and corridors served as reservoirs and conduits for a massive water pump that was used to pump water into the desert to cultivate the land. Kunkel asserted that the pyramid actually had two pumps, one above ground in the middle and upper levels, and the other below ground in the enigmatic subterranean room. They would combine to form two streams, each of which would escape the pyramid through a shaft located on the north or south face. Unsurprisingly, Kunkel's work generated a great deal of skepticism. This skepticism came from engineers as well as Egyptologists who flatly rejected the theory. Engineers noted that Kunkel's design would have required the creation of a vacuum, a number of valves, and some type of combustible fuel and combustion chamber to drive the pump. Yet not bound by the same restrictions as mainstream Egyptology, many engineers began to look closer at Kunkel's work, realizing that it was not totally without merit. While Kunkel's two-pump design would likely not have been possible, some engineers noted that the ram pump might actually make sense. A ram pump is a simple device used for centuries to move water from a reservoir to somewhere else using two moving parts and the force of gravity. Could the builders of the Great Pyramid really have created a ram pump on such a massive scale? With the possibility established, other researchers and scholars picked up on the idea, designing a theoretical layout in which the Great Pyramid was fed with water from the Western Nile and nearby Lake Moeris, which each sat at a higher elevation, making them, according to researchers, the perfect sources for a gravity-fed water system on the Giza Plateau. Some even believe that the retaining wall, which is known to have once surrounded the pyramid complex, could have been an embankment for an on-site reservoir. As more and more people came to believe that the Great Pyramid really could have been an enormous ancient water pump, they were backed by one simple overarching argument: economics. In order to build the Great Pyramid, 2.3 million blocks weighing between 25 and 80 tons each would need to be carried and placed at a rate of 12 blocks per hour continuously for 7 days a week. Construction would have required 20 years. Additionally, it's been calculated that the pyramid would have cost more than $5 billion to build if converted to present monetary amounts. Simply put, why go through all of this work and expense for a tomb? Egyptian pharaohs had undoubtedly more freedom than contemporary democratically elected leaders, yet they were still subject to the same financial and economic constraints. Would it not make more sense to go to all this trouble for something that was going to provide a higher return on investment, like, say, a water pump that would allow you to irrigate your civilization and feed your people? Here, we must take a step back in order to get to the point. If the Great Pyramid really was an enormous water pump, then it must have been pumping water somewhere. This is where some have connected the dots and returned to the mysterious pit at Zawiat el-Aryan. They believe that the site was not an unfinished pyramid, but an outflow location for water pumped by the Great Pyramid. The enormous hole was created as a storage space for water pumped up from below. They speculated that perhaps here was where the water came up after noticing how firmly the circular tub was covered in clay and lime. Perhaps it had been sealed to avoid leakage when the pump was not in use. Later, as though covering a spring, the trench was filled with a tangled mess of limestone blocks. Water from a severe downpour had crept into the earth when Barsanti removed these blocks. Barsanti believed that this was because of the existence of secret apartments, but it's possible that the water seeping into an underutilized subsurface water system is to blame. Could the ancients really have built an underground irrigation system driven by a mighty pump that stretched to Zawiat el-Aryan and across Egypt? In modern times, research on the subject has continued, and in fact, science is beginning to reveal that it might actually go further than pumping water for irrigation. Early in 1999, a marine engineer named John Cadman was perusing the shelves at a used bookstore when he stumbled across an old, dusty copy of a most unusual book, written by one Edward Kunkel and entitled Pharaoh's Pump. Cadman, a specialist in hydraulics, was interested in the book and decided to buy it and take it home. He started to read it more carefully and found that Kunkel's proposal was not quite as absurd as he had thought. Cadman started studying everything he could about the Great Pyramid because he was curious to understand more. His fascination with what he found quickly grew, once he realized that the Great Pyramid's underground chamber strikingly resembled the design of a ram pump. He continued his investigation, observing from images that the underground chamber clearly had water damage. Cavitation, which is created by gas bubbles in water as a result of agitation, was particularly noticeable on the ceiling, as well as clear damage from compression waves striking it. In other words, it was not just that the subterranean chamber could work as a water pump. According to Cadman's trained eyes, it appeared it had worked as such. At this point, Cadman knew what he had to do. He must draw upon his years of experience with hydraulics and create his own scaled model of the pyramid and its subterranean chamber to see if it would really work as a water pump. He constructed his first model in July 1999 using a nearby river as a reservoir. Unfortunately, the model did not function as expected. It began to leak, then cracked, and it stopped pumping water as he had intended. Cadman, though, would not give up so simply. He created a second model, then a third, but they all met the same demise. On his fourth attempt, though, he got everything correct, and to Cadman's great relief, his pump worked. This demonstrated to Cadman unequivocally that the Great Pyramid could have served as a massive water pump, and that this was surely not an accident. He claimed that it was obvious that the people who built the Great Pyramid's underground chamber knew exactly what they were doing. This was the breakthrough that disciples of Edward Kunkel's original work in the 1960s had been waiting for, the tangible proof that a Great Pyramid water pump was more than just speculation. And yet, as Cadman continued his research, the results got even more mind-blowing and, in fact, went far beyond the mere pumping of water. After demonstrating that the subterranean chamber of the Great Pyramid could serve as a water pump, Cadman constructed a second, larger model and enclosed it in concrete to mimic the effects of the pump functioning underneath. To a seasonal creek with a pond acting as a reservoir, he moved the model, which weighed more than 500 pounds. As soon as this model started to function, Cadman discovered something that surprised him. The pump, which was enclosed in concrete, was producing a vertical compression wave that could be felt 20 feet away, through the ground, and heard more than 100 feet away. Cadman realized that what he had constructed went far beyond just a water pump. Because of the powerful waves it generated, Cadman renamed the device a pulse generator. Truly, this changed everything. If the Great Pyramid's subterranean chamber was generating pulse waves, these waves would have moved through the granite upper chambers and passageways of the pyramid and, due to granite's reflective properties, created ionization in the atmosphere, in effect, producing an electric field. To put it more simply, the pulses created by the subterranean pump would have interacted with the pyramid's granite to produce electricity. It appeared that Cadman had not only proven that the Great Pyramid could function as a water pump to move water around Egypt for irrigation, but also that it could actually create electricity in ancient times. In 1905, Tesla filed a patent titled Art of Transmitting Electrical Energy Through a Natural Medium, which contained the design for something called Tesla's electromagnetic pyramid. His brilliant concept was to use a massive pyramid-like building to transmit energy into the sky, where it could then be captured by individual receivers all across the world. He supplemented his creativity with what he had learned about ancient Egypt. A 55-ton conductive metal dome tops the 187-foot-tall Wardenclyffe Tower, a copy of Tesla's electromagnetic pyramid, interestingly enough. Unfortunately, Tesla lost his funding before he could demonstrate clearly that his model could produce electricity, and the project was shelved. Even though Tesla's research on electromagnetic pyramids was abandoned, the concept persisted. The Great Pyramid's initial construction was made of white tufa limestone blocks, which are renowned for their exceptional insulation qualities, and its tunnels and chambers were lined with granite, a well-known electrical conductor. Thanks to Tesla, many people started to see the Great Pyramid with new eyes. Simply put, this would have been the ideal ideal design if the goal was to make and use electricity. Little granite channels of electrical conductivity would have been covered by insulation, much like copper lines are today, which are enclosed in rubber. Moreover, it is known that the Great Pyramid was originally topped by a capstone of gold, one of the most electrically conductive materials on Earth, similar to how Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower was topped with a 55-ton metal ball. In other words, if the Great Pyramid was designed for electricity, its builders couldn't have done it better. And if it wasn't, well, it's a historic coincidence. They'd accidentally stumbled into the perfect design. Indeed, so suggestive was the evidence that the idea continued to develop into modern times. Mechanical engineer Christopher Dunn had spent more than 50 years in the most prestigious aerospace production positions. Dunn started to become intrigued by the mystery surrounding the Great Pyramid of Giza in the 1970s, simultaneously with his day job in the aerospace sector. He started studying the Great Pyramid from the viewpoint of mechanical engineering in his spare time. He gradually began to think that the pyramid was more complex than it first appeared to be. In his words, "I came to the conclusion that with such an investment of resources and the extreme precision that was crafted into the building, it was a building that functioned as a machine, and the machine was used to harness energy from the Earth. I was inspired to research and discover how this machine operated." For more than 20 years, he conducted this research, becoming a prominent expert on the subject, publishing dozens of articles and appearing as a trusted voice on mainstream television. In 1998, 1 year before John Cadman's legendary experiments proved the electrical capacity of the Great Pyramid, Dunn finally published his seminal work, titled The Giza Power Plant. The book meticulously described a system in which the Great Pyramid drew seismic energy from the Earth, producing electricity in the King's Chamber through the use of hydrogen created by a chemical reaction in the Queen's Chamber. So groundbreaking was Dunn's work that it inspired researchers around the world to follow his lead. For more than 2 decades, research has continued and expanded, becoming more astonishing every year. In fact, more than ever, science, and specifically mainstream science, is taking the idea of the Great Pyramid as an electrical generator seriously. In fact, a study on the Great Pyramid's response to radio waves that was published in the esteemed Journal of Applied Physics in 2018 came to the conclusion that the pyramid could, in fact, concentrate electromagnetic energy in its internal chambers as well as under its base, which seemed to support Cadman's work and Tesla's theories. Then in 2019, the Egyptologists James Brown and J.J. and Desiree Hurtak produced a new book titled Giza's Industrial Complex that expanded on Dunn's findings and proposed that the entire Giza Plateau served as an energy generation system. Once more, mainstream science today, more than ever, considers the Great Pyramid's potential use as an electricity generator to be highly likely, which is fantastic. Hey, that's all for today. We hope you liked today's video. Please share, like, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.